At that sound the bent shape of the king sprang suddenly erect. Tall and proud he seemed again, and rising in his stirrups he cried in a loud voice more clear than any there had ever heard a mortal man achieve before, "Arise, arise, riders of Theoden! Fell deeds awake fire and slaughter! Spear shall be shaken, shield be splintered, sword day, red day ere the sun rises! Ride now, ride to Gondor!" With that he seized a great horn from Guzlaf his banner-bearer, and he blew up such a blast upon it that it burst asunder. And straightway all the horns in the host were lifted up in music, and the blowing of the horns of Rohan in that hour was like a storm upon the plain, and a thunder in the mountains. Ride now, ride to Gondor! Suddenly the king cried to Snowmane, and the horse sprang away. Behind him his banner blew in the wind, white horse on a field of green, but he outpaced it. After him thundered the knights of his house, but he was ever before them. Aylmer rode there, the white horse tail on his helm floating in his speed, and the front of the first Aelred roared like a breaker foaming to the shore, but Theoden could not be overtaken. Fey he seemed, nor the battle fury of his fathers ran like new fire in his veins. And he was borne up on Snowmane like a god of old, even as Orome the Great in the battle of the Valar when the world was young. His golden shield was uncovered, and lo, it shone like an image of the sun, and the grass flamed into green above the white feet of his steed. For morning came morning in a wind from the sea, and darkness was removed, and the hosts of Mordor wailed, and the terror overtook them, and they fled and died, and the hoofs of wrath rode over them. And then all the host of Rohan burst into song, and they sang as they slew, for the joy of battle was on them, and the sound of their singing that was fair and terrible came even to the city. Being handy with flint and tinder, he soon had a small blaze going. It made little or no smoke, but gave off an aromatic scent. He was just stooping over his fire, shielding it and building it up with heavier wood, when Gollum returned, carrying the pans carefully and grumbling to himself. He set the pans down, and then suddenly saw what Sam was doing. He gave a thin hissing shriek, and seemed to be both frightened and angry. "Ah, Snow!" he cried. "No silly hobbits! Foolish, yes, foolish! They mustn't do it!" "Mustn't do what?" asked Sam in surprise. "Not make the nasty red tongues," hissed Gollum. Fire! It's dangerous, yes it is. It burns, it kills, and it will bring enemies, yes it will." "I don't think so," said Sam. "Don't see why it should, if you don't put wet stuff on it and make a smother. But if it does, it does. I'm going to risk it anyhow. I'm going to stew these conies." "Stew the rabbits?" squealed Gollum in dismay. "Spoil the beautiful meat Smeagol saved for you, poor hungry Smeagol. What for? What for? Silly hobbit. They're young, they're tender, they're nice. Eat them, eat them." He clawed at the nearest rabbit, already skinned and lying by the fire. Now, said Sam, each to his own fashion. Our bread chokes you, and raw coney chokes me. If you give me a coney, the coney's mine, see? To cook if I have a mind, and I have. You needn't watch me. Go and catch another and eat it as you fancy, somewhere private and out of my sight. Then you won't see the fire, and I shan't see you, and we'll both be the happier. And I'll see the fire don't smoke, if that's any comfort to you. Gollum withdrew, grumbling, and crawled into the fern. Sam busied himself with his pans. What a hobbit needs with coney, he said to himself, is some herbs and roots, especially taters. Not to mention bread. Herbs we can manage, seemingly. Gollum, he called softly. Third time pays for all. I want some herbs. Deep down here by the dark water lived old Gollum. I don't know where he came from, nor who or what he was. He was Gollum, as dark as darkness, except for two big, round, pale eyes. He had a boat, and he rowed about quite quietly on the lake, for lake it was, wide and deep and deadly cold. He paddled it with large feet dangling over the side, but never a ripple did he make, not he. He was looking out of his pale lamp-like eyes for blind fish, which he grabbed with his long fingers as quick as thinking. He liked meat too. Goblin, he thought, good, when he could get it. But he took care they never found him out. He just throttled them from behind if ever they came down alone anywhere near the edge of the water while he was prowling about. They very seldom did, for they had a feeling that something unpleasant was lurking down there, down at the very roots of the mountain. They had come on the lake when they were tunnelling down long ago, and they found they could go no further, so there their road ended in that direction, and there was no reason to go that way, unless the great goblin sent them. Sometimes he took a fancy for fish from the lake, and sometimes neither goblin nor fish came back. Actually, Gollum lived on a slimy island of rock in the middle of the lake. He was watching Bilbo now from the distance with his pale eyes like telescopes. Bilbo could not see him, but he was wondering a lot about Bilbo, for he could see that he was no goblin at all. Gollum got into his boat and shot off from the island while Bilbo was sitting on the brink, altogether flummoxed and at the end of his way and his wits. Suddenly up came Gollum, and whispered and hissed, "Bless and splashes, my precious. I guess it's a choice feast. At least a tasty morsel it'll make us Gollum." And when he said Gollum, he made a horrible swallowing noise in his throat. That is how he got his name, though he always called himself my precious. The Hobbit jumped nearly out of his skin when the hiss came in his ears, and he suddenly saw the pale eyes sticking out at him. "Who are you?" he said, thrusting his dagger in front of him. "What is he, my precious?" whispered Gollum, who always spoke to himself, through never having anyone else to speak to. That is what he had come to find out, for he was not really very hungry at the moment, only curious. Otherwise he would have grabbed first and whispered afterwards. "I'm Mr. Bilbo Baggins. I've lost the dwarves and I've lost the wizard and I don't know where I am. And I don't want to know if only I can get away." "What's he got in his hands?" said Gollum, looking at the sword which he did not quite like. "A sword, a blade which came out of Gondolin," said Gollum, and became quite polite. "Perhaps she sits here and chats it with it a bitsy, my precious. It likes riddles, perhaps, does it? Does it?" He was anxious to appear friendly, at any rate for the moment, until he found out more about the sword and the Hobbit, whether he was quite alone really, whether he was good to eat, and whether Gollum was really hungry. Riddles were all he could think of. Asking them, and sometimes guessing them, had been the only game he'd ever played with our funny creatures sitting in their holes in the long, long ago before the goblins came, and he was cut off from his friends far under the mountains. "Very well," said Bilbo, who was anxious to agree, until he found out more about the creature, whether he was quite alone, whether he was fierce or hungry, and whether he was a friend of the goblins. "You ask first," he said, because he had not had time to think of a riddle. So Gollum hissed, "What has roots as nobody sees? He's taller than trees. Up it goes, and yet never grows." "Easy," said Bilbo. "Mountain, I suppose." "Does it guess easy? It must have a competition with us, my precious. If Precious asks and it doesn't answer, we eats it, my precious. If it asks us and we doesn't answer, then we does what it wants, eh? We shows it the way out, yes?" "All right," said Bilbo, not daring to disagree and nearly bursting his brain to think of riddles that could save him from being eaten. "There are 30 white horses on a red hill. First they champ, then they stamp, then they stand still." That was all he could think of to ask. The idea of eating was rather on his mind. It was rather an old one, too, and Gollum knew the answer as well as you do. "Chestnuts, chestnuts," he hissed. Teeth, my precious, but we is only 6. "Rah, whom, rah!" The trees quivered and bent as if a gust had struck them. There was another pause, and the marching music began like solemn drums, and above the rolling beats and booms the swell voices singing high and strong. "Taroon, naroon, 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 tahora, kumba, kumba, noon." The Ents were coming, and ever nearer, louder rose their song. "Tahura, hara, lamba, noon, da lamba, tara, munda, roon, da munda, rum, da runda, rum, da munda, lamba, munda, tom." Then Brigglad picked up the hobbits and strode from his house. "To Isengard!" the Ents cried in many voices. "To Isengard! To Isengard, to Isengard, be ringed and barred with doors of stone. To Isengard, be strong and hard and cold as stone and bare as bone. We go, we go, we go to war, to hew the stone and break the door. For bowl and bough are burning now, the furnace roars, we go to war. To land of gloom, with tramp of doom, with roll of drum, we come, we come. To Isengard, with doom we come, with doom we come, with doom we come."
Larelam tarlasis urinnan Injaruno tinarviral maralgron Injavilinti julmargan järmjörmarillesimmerorvareva Andune pelavardu telmar Noloinia sentintilarielne Omar joaritarierinan Simani jordanen koantuva Ansitin talivardo losseo Le fagnamara delentari ortene aril jartierundulla mulle Asindar noriello kaita mornie Ival mallennarim memet Arisien tu pokala kilio mirioele Sivan vanarom malovan wavalimar Namarie Nairuval yavalimar Nael yehiruval Namarie.
The voice of Pippin was suddenly lifted up above the others in one of Bilbo's favourite bath songs. "Sing hey for the bath at close of day that washes the weary mud away. Alone is he that will not sing. Oh, water hot is a noble thing. Oh, sweet is the sound of falling rain and the brook that leaps from hill to plain. But better than rain or rippling streams is water hot with smokes and steam. Oh, water cold we may pour at need down a thirsty throat to be glad indeed. But better is beer if drink we lack, and water hot poured down the back. Oh, water is fair that leaps on high in a fountain white beneath the sky. But never did fountain sound so sweet as splashing hot water with my feet." Hey, come merry doll, derry doll, me darling, light goes the weather wind and the feathered starling. Down along Underhill, shining in the sunlight, waiting on the doorstep for the cold starlight. There a pretty lady is, river woman's daughter, slender as the willow wand, clearer than the water. Old Tom Bombadil, water lilies bringing, comes hopping home again. Can you hear him singing? Hey, come merry doll, derry doll, and merry-o, goldberry, goldberry, yellowberry-o. Poor old willow man, you tuck your roots away. Tom's in a hurry now. Evening will follow day. Tom's going home again, water lilies bringing. Hey, come merry doll, can you hear me singing? Three rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the dark lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. Ar elbereth gilthaniel, silevrin penamiriel, o menel aglar elena. Nach haired palandiriel agalat remmen en ora, fanurilos lellin von nevaia si nevairon.